Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. One time Cardinal Dolan when he was a young seminarian in Rome, he saw Archbishop Fulton Sheen walking across the campus having just met with Pope Paul VI. And Cardinal Dolan said to Archbishop Fulton Sheen, "What did Pope Paul VI say to you?" And Pope Paul VI said, according to Fulton Sheen, he said, "Bishop Sheen, you're going to have a high place in heaven." And then the group with Cardinal Dolan said to Fulton Sheen, "Well, what did you respond back?" And in his own wit, he said, "Your Holiness, could you make that an infallible statement?" So when the Church actually canonizes someone a saint, it's an infallible statement. I mean, we believe that that is a certain truth that the Pope has made on behalf of the Church. And it'd be nice if we could all have that happen. Probably most of us won't have that kind of canonization process. But in today's gospel, Jesus says something equally as striking as that. "Those whom the Father has put in my hand, I have not lost any." Of those the Father has put in my hand, I have not lost any. Now, have you ever thought that you are in Jesus' hand? That you are in the Father's hand? Kind of, Jesus is making an infallible statement. Those in my hand, I lose none of. Now, sheep, although they're kind of dumb animals, they're good followers. They're sort of obedient that way. But they were very important to the people of Jesus' time and provided a lot of precious gifts. It was the sheep who would give milk. It was the sheep who would give cheese. It was the sheep who would give meat. It was the sheep who would provide the wool for your clothing, let alone just to be a friend of the family, if you will. And so there's a certain kind of richness about sheep. Now, when the shepherds had their sheep, and some of you heard this before and others not, but what they would do in the night, several shepherds would gather their sheep together, being, if you will, itinerant, walking around, and they would huddle all their sheep together in a little pen, and some shepherds could sleep while one stayed up. And then when the one would go to sleep, another would wake up. And in the morning, rather than looking for the mark on the sheep, whose is whose, each shepherd could literally just talk out loud, and that shepherd's sheep, knowing the voice, would follow that shepherd. That is a beautiful image, isn't it? And Jesus says, "My sheep know my voice. They hear my voice and they follow me." In order to hear that voice, we have to have a life of prayer. Every day, some listening to God. We're really good at talking. It's hard to listen. But every day, some listening, and that still interior small voice will become more and more familiar. And that voice is always full of love. That voice is full of encouragement. It brings peace. So if you're testing voices, you can ask, what's the fruit of this voice? And the voice of the shepherd, again, brings encouragement, peace, joy, the good fruit. We're also thinking about vocations today, and it is the shepherd who leads us and calls us, that voice. Some of you in this room may be called to be a religious sister. Some may be called to be a priest or a brother or a deacon. But all of you are called, most of you, to marriage. It's not something you fall into. We actually want to hear the voice of the shepherd calling us to this vocation. And if you discern it as such, then you will be most fruitful, most happy, most fulfilled. Now, I encourage my seminarians who are exiting the seminary, I'm not going to tell you all who they are, but I say to them, don't just go out there and marry just the most beautiful woman you instantly see, because 2 or 3 years in a marriage, what you realize you marry is character. It's character. And I would suggest to you tonight that you want to find someone as your spouse who listens to the voice of the shepherd. Because if that person is following Christ, then they are going to be transformed by grace and going to become a better man and a better woman throughout your married life. But if that person is far from the shepherd's voice, you're going to have a lot more dangers and difficulties. So today, we want to be in the hand of Jesus. In fact, it says God the Father gives us as a gift to Jesus. You and I are a gift of the Father to Jesus, who has us in the palm of their hands. If we would listen and follow the voice of the shepherd. So let's take a moment now just interiorly and say, Lord, help me to hear your voice, and may he fulfill your vocation in a beautiful way.